"You're too stupid to run this company," my stepdad roared, firing me from the family firm. Little did he know I had already siphoned its core assets and would leave him with nothing but debt. It started with a spreadsheet error. Just one number that didn't add up in our quarterly reports. The kind of thing most people would brush off as a typo. But when you've practically grown up reading financial statements, when your dad taught you to double-check every decimal point before you learned to drive, you notice these things. I remember sitting there in my father's old office, my office now, technically, at 11:30 p.m., staring at that number until my eyes burned. $247,832.45 transferred to an account I'd never seen before. The transaction was labeled as equipment acquisition, Q3, but we hadn't bought any new equipment that quarter. I would know. I'd personally put all major purchases on hold while we updated our inventory systems. That was 3 months ago. Before everything went to hell. Before I discovered just how deep the rot in my father's company had spread. I should probably back up a bit. My name's Kingston, and until recently, I was the VP of company my father built from nothing over 30 years ago. He passed away 6 years back. Heart attack, right at his desk. The kind of death he probably would have chosen if he'd had the choice. Always said he'd rather die working than retire. Mom took it hard. Really hard. Which is why none of us objected when she started dating again after just a year. "Your father would want me to be happy," she'd say. And she was right. What we didn't expect was Weston. Weston showed up at one of our charity galas, all expensive suits and perfect teeth. He had this way of making everyone feel important, like they were in on some private joke. Mom fell hard and fast. Within 6 months they were married. Within a year, he'd somehow convinced the board to make him CEO. Fresh blood, he called it. New perspectives. I didn't object much. I was focused on operations, on maintaining the quality standards Dad had set. Besides, Weston seemed to know what he was talking about. Our stock price went up. Investors were happy. But then things started changing. Small things at first. Long-time employees suddenly retiring. Supplier contracts getting shifted to companies I'd never heard of. That sort of thing. My sister Madison, she's in legal, was the first to notice something off about the new contracts. "The terms are weird, King," she told me over coffee one morning. "It's like they're deliberately complicated. And these companies, I can't find any real information about them." I started digging. Quietly. The more I looked, the more those little discrepancies kept showing up. Money moving in strange ways. Resources being allocated to projects that didn't seem to exist. Then came the comments. Little digs at first. "Your father's methods are a bit outdated, don't you think?" Weston would say in meetings. Or, "This isn't a mom and pop shop anymore, Kingston. We need to think bigger." The real kicker came last week. I was reviewing some documents with my friend Jonah, who's been with the company since college, when Weston burst into my office without knocking. "What are you doing with those files?" he demanded, his face turning that particular shade of red I'd come to know well. "Just reviewing the Q3 reports," I said, keeping my voice level. "There are some inconsistencies I wanted to." "Inconsistencies?" He spat the word like it was poison. "The only inconsistency here is having someone like you in a position of authority. You're just like your father. Stuck in the past, too scared to take real risks." Jonah tried to intervene, but Weston wasn't finished. "You think I don't see you? Sneaking around questioning my decisions. This isn't your father's little workshop anymore. This is a real company now, and it needs real leadership." I stayed quiet, which only seemed to infuriate him more. My silence had always bothered him. Dad taught me that sometimes the best response is no response at all. "You know what?" he continued, his voice rising. "I've had enough. The board meeting next week? I'm recommending your immediate termination. Let's see how well you understand business when you're out on your ass." He stormed out, leaving the door open behind him. Classic power move. Jonah let out a low whistle. "You okay?" I nodded, pulling up the file I'd been reviewing before the interruption. "You still have access to the backup servers, right?" "Yeah, why?" "Because," I said, turning my screen to show him the transaction records I'd been piecing together, "I think I finally know where that missing $250,000 went, and it's just the tip of the iceberg." Mom called that night. She was crying. "Kingston, please, just apologize to Weston. He says you've been causing problems, questioning his authority. Can't you two just get along?" For me, I thought about telling her everything right then. About the missing money, the shell companies, the pattern I'd started to see. But I could hear Weston's voice in the background, and I knew it wasn't the right time. "It'll be okay, Mom," I said instead. "Everything's going to work out exactly the way it should." After I hung up, I sent a message to Madison. "Remember that contingency plan we talked about? It's time." Her response came seconds later. "Already on it. Aubrey from HR sent over those old files you asked for. You're not going to believe what we found." I leaned back in my chair, my father's chair, and looked at the photo of him on my desk. He was standing in front of the factory on opening day, sleeves rolled up, that quiet smile on his face. The same smile he had when he taught me my first lesson about business. Trust your gut, son. But always have the paperwork to back it up. Don't worry, Dad. I've got the paperwork. And Weston has no idea what's coming. Update. First, thank you all for the overwhelming support on my previous post. Your messages helped more than you know. As promised, here's what's been happening over the past few months. Thanks for all the support on my last post. A lot has happened in the past week, and I need to get this down while it's fresh in my mind. Remember those old files Aubrey sent over? Turns out my father kept records of every business that tried to acquire our company over the years, including 3 failed takeover attempts by shell companies that, guess what, all lead back to Weston. He'd been circling our company like a vulture for nearly a decade before he ever met my mother. I found out about this at 3 a.m. last Tuesday, sitting in my sister Madison's apartment with takeout containers scattered across her coffee table. Jonah was passed out on the couch, laptop still open to financial records from Weston's previous business ventures. Look at this pattern, Madison said, spreading papers across the floor. Every company he's been involved with in the last 15 years. It's the same story. He marries into family businesses, gains control, and within 3 years they're either bankrupted or sold off for parts. My stomach turned as she pulled up news articles. Defunct factories in Ohio. A shuttered publishing house in Maine. A family restaurant chain in Florida. Now nothing but empty buildings and unpaid debts. The wives? I asked, already knowing the answer. Left with nothing. He's got a prenup with Mom too, doesn't he? I nodded. She said it was his idea, to protect the family business. The irony made me want to punch something. The next morning, I had a breakfast meeting with Mom at her favorite diner, the same place Dad used to take us for Sunday brunch. She looked tired, older than she should. Kingston, please, she said, stirring her coffee endlessly. Weston says if you just apologize, maybe step back from operations for a while. Mom, I interrupted gently, sliding my phone across the table. I need you to look at something. She stared at the screen, at the photo of Weston at another woman's wedding 15 years ago. His third wife, according to the records, the owner of that publishing house in Maine. This could be fake, she whispered, but I could see the doubt creeping in. There's more, a lot more. But I need you to trust me right now. Can you do that? She handed back my phone with shaking hands. I need time to think. I gave her a USB drive. When you're ready, everything's on here. Just be careful where you look at it. Back at the office, things were getting tense. Weston had started pulling people into mysterious meetings. Jonah texted me from the 3rd floor. He's going through old contracts. Looks scared. Good. Madison had been busy too. She'd quietly transferred copies of every important document to secure servers. If he tries to delete anything, she said, we'll know. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Thursday afternoon, Weston burst into the conference room during my meeting with our biggest client. What did you tell them? He demanded, face purple with rage. I stayed seated, kept my voice calm. I'm in the middle of a meeting, Weston. We can talk later. Like hell we can. You've been spreading lies, trying to undermine me? Our client, Mr. Chen, stood up slowly. He'd known my father for 20 years. Perhaps, he said. This is a good time to discuss the irregular charges on our last 3 invoices. Weston went pale. I smiled. Yes, let's discuss those. 2 hours later, I was officially fired. Weston made quite a scene in the lobby, shouting about my incompetence, my lack of vision, my sabotage of his leadership. I let him rant. Every word was being recorded by security cameras. Every witness another nail in his coffin. You're too stupid to run this company, he roared, jabbing his finger in my face. Just like your idiot father. I caught Madison's eye across the lobby. She gave a slight nod. Everything was in place. You're right about one thing, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm not running this company. I paused, letting the moment stretch. But neither are you. Not anymore. His face went from rage to confusion to fear in the span of seconds. He must have seen something in my expression, because he turned and ran toward the elevator. Heading to the executive floor? I called after him. You should check your email first. The board's calling an emergency meeting. Something about unauthorized transfers and shell companies. Oh, and those contracts you've been trying to delete. We have copies. All of them. The elevator doors closed on his shocked face. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. I watched the files. We need to talk. Another from Jonah. Board members are all confirmed for tomorrow. It's happening. And finally, from Madison. Just got word from the bank. All critical assets are secured. He can't touch them now. I packed up my office slowly, carefully. Put Dad's photo in my bag last. As I walked out, I passed the wall of company milestones. 30 years of history. Of family. Of trust. Weston thought he could take all of that away. Thought he could destroy another family's legacy and walk away rich. He has no idea what's coming tomorrow. Update 2. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. I arrived at 6:30. The early morning security guard barely glanced at my recently revoked badge. He'd known me since I was a teenager, back when I'd spend summers helping Dad with inventory. Some loyalties run deeper than corporate paperwork. I needed those quiet hours in the empty building. Not for last-minute preparations. Those had been in place for months. I just wanted to walk the factory floor one last time as my father's son, not as the person I'd have to become today. The assembly lines were silent, but you could still smell the metal and oil. Dad used to say you could tell a good factory by its smell. Money smells like hard work, son, he'd tell me. And hard work smells like steel. My phone buzzed. A message from Madison. Mom's ready. She's bringing the original documents. That was the piece I hadn't expected. Mom had spent all night in Dad's home office, digging through old files. She found something none of us had known existed. Dad's personal records of every shady takeover attempt Weston had made, including notes from private investigators. Your father knew, she'd told me last night, her voice hollow. He knew what kind of man Weston was. He was building a case against him. Why didn't he finish it? She'd looked away. He died before he could. The board members started arriving at 8:30. I watched from Dad's my old office, noting who came in together, who looked nervous, who seemed confident. Weston arrived last, at 8:57, wearing the same suit he'd worn to marry my mother. The meeting started exactly on time. Jonah had insisted on that. Everything by the book, he'd said. Give him no procedural grounds to contest anything. Weston took his seat at the head of the table, that practiced smile fixed on his face. I know yesterday's incident has caused some concern, he began, but I assure you. Before we continue, our longest-serving board member interrupted. We have some items that need immediate attention. She nodded to her assistant, who started distributing thick folders to everyone present. I watched Weston's face as he opened his copy. Watched the exact moment he realized what he was looking at. These documents, she continued, detail a pattern of financial misconduct that demands immediate action. Weston's laugh sounded forced. These are obviously fabricated. Kingston is just bitter about his termination. The documentation comes from multiple sources. Another board member cut in. Including your previous business ventures. That's when Mom walked in. She looked different. Stronger. She was carrying Dad's old briefcase, the one he'd used every day for 30 years. I think, she said quietly, you should see these too. She placed a stack of papers on the table. My late husband's personal investigation into your activities, dated 3 years before I ever met you. The blood drained from Weston's face. He started to stand, but Jonah was already there, placing a hand firmly on his shoulder. Sit down, Jonah said softly. We're just getting started. The next 2 hours were methodical. Madison presented evidence of fund transfers to shell companies. Jonah walked through the systematic dismantling attempts disguised as modernization. Aubrey provided testimony from employees who'd been threatened or bribed. But it was the documents from Dad that hit hardest. Pages of detailed notes, photos, bank records, everything needed to expose Weston's pattern of marrying into companies and destroying them from within. This is ridiculous, Weston sputtered, but his voice had lost its authority. You can't prove. Actually, I spoke for the first time. We can prove everything, including where the company's core assets have been for the past 3 months. His head snapped up. What? I smiled. Dad's smile. The one that never quite reached the eyes. Did you really think I was stupid enough to leave everything vulnerable while we built our case? Every critical patent, every major client contract, every piece of intellectual property. They were all transferred to a secure holding company. One you can't touch. You can't do that. The board approved it, the chairwoman finished. Unanimously. 3 months ago. But I never. You were too busy setting up your own transfers to notice ours, Madison added. Check your email. The SEC has some questions about those, by the way. The vote to remove him was unanimous. As security escorted him out, he was already on his phone, probably calling his lawyer. It wouldn't help. We had everything documented, everything legal, everything witnessed. Mom watched him go, twisting her wedding ring. Without a word, she took it off and placed it on the table. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork and procedures. By afternoon, the company had new leadership, new safeguards, and a clear path forward. Dad's company would survive. His legacy would continue. I found myself back on the factory floor as the day shift was ending. The familiar sounds of machinery powering down, of workers heading home, of a day's honest work completed. A text from Madison broke my reverie. You need to see this. Weston's other victims are coming forward. All of them. Another from Mom. Come home for dinner? There's something else in your father's files we need to discuss. And finally, one from an unknown number. This isn't over, boy. You have no idea what you've started. I smiled, breathed in the smell of steel and victory and headed for the exit. Let him try whatever he was planning. We were ready. Final update. The real revenge, as it turns out, wasn't in the takedown. It was in what came after. I'm writing this from my father's old lake house, where we used to spend summers when I was a kid. The same place where, 3 days ago, Mom found the last piece of Dad's investigation hidden in a false bottom of his tackle box. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to that dinner Mom invited me to. She was waiting with an old leather journal, Dad's private records. There's something you need to see, she said, pushing it across the table. Page 47? It was a list of names, dozens of them, each one connected to a company Weston had destroyed. But these weren't just business records. They were people. Workers who lost pensions, families who lost homes, lives he'd ruined while walking away rich. Your father, Mom said quietly, was building a network, connecting victims, building a case bigger than just our company. I stayed up all night reading. Dad had everything, contact information, statements, evidence of fraud going back 20 years. He'd been preparing for the day Weston might target our company. The next morning, I started making calls. It snowballed faster than any of us expected. Madison's phone wouldn't stop ringing with people wanting to come forward. Jonah had to set up a separate email server just to handle the incoming documentation. But the real surprise came from the tackle box. Kingston, Mom said when she found it. I think your father knew he was sick. Long before the heart attack. This was his backup plan. Inside was a USB drive and a letter. Dad had been working with federal investigators, building a RICO case. The drive contained everything they needed, except for one key piece of evidence that only Weston himself could provide. Which he did, beautifully, when he tried to retaliate. The threatening text was just the beginning. Within days Weston started moving money. Big amounts. Exactly as Dad predicted he would. He's running his usual playbook, Jonah said, watching the transactions flag on our monitoring system. Trying to hide assets before the lawsuits hit. I smiled. Is he using his regular channels? Every single one. Perfect. See, those channels? We'd identified them months ago. Every transfer, every shell company, every offshore account, the feds were watching all of it. Waiting. They moved on a Wednesday morning. I was in a meeting when Madison burst in, grinning. Turn on the news. The headlines were beautiful. Multi-state financial fraud ring exposed. Weston's face was everywhere. But he wasn't alone. His entire network, the lawyers, the accountants, the fake companies, all of them caught in the same net. His perp walk made the evening news. Still wearing that expensive suit, but no smile this time. No smooth talks, just handcuffs and federal charges. But here's the part that would have made Dad proud. We didn't just take Weston down. We're rebuilding what he destroyed. Remember that holding company where we secured our assets? Turns out it's the perfect vehicle for helping other families recover their businesses. Madison's working with a team of lawyers, using our resources to help Weston's previous victims reclaim what they lost. The publishing house in Maine? Reopening next month. The restaurant chain in Florida? The original family just got their locations back. That factory in Ohio? Its workers are getting their pensions restored. Mom's doing better. She's turned her experience into something positive, starting a support group for others who've been manipulated by predatory partners. There's healing in helping, she says. Yesterday I found her in Dad's office, looking at old photos. He would be proud of you, she said. Not just for saving the company, but for finishing what he started. I picked up his photo from the desk, the one from opening day. We did it together, I said. Just like he would have wanted. This morning, I got another message from an unknown number. But this time, it wasn't a threat. Thank you, it read. My father lost everything to Weston 10 years ago. He didn't live to see justice, but I know he's resting easier now. There were dozens more like it. Each one a reminder of why we fought so hard. Weston's preliminary hearing is next week. The evidence is overwhelming. His lawyers are already talking plea deal, but the feds aren't interested. They want to make an example of him. As for me, I'm sitting on the lake house dock, watching the sunset. The same view Dad loved. Tomorrow, I'll go back to running the company. The right way. The way he taught me. But tonight, I'm just a son who finished his father's fight. And somewhere, I know Dad's smiling that quiet smile of his, the one that says everything's exactly as it should be.